So my name is Chris Belter. I am a bibliometrics informationist at the National Institutes of Health Library, which is basically a fancy way of saying that I provide bibliometrics services through the NIH library. So just like people would come to the library for literature search help or systematic review help, they can also come to the library for bibliometrics help. So we do quite a lot of things. So let me just kind of tell you a little bit about what we do as a bibliometrics service provider. So we provide a number of different things. We provide services at two different tiers, essentially. We provide what we call core services, and we provide custom services. So what we do in some of these core services is we provide annual publication reports. So we look at all of the publications that are coming out of whatever institutes or centers, which we call ICs, and we basically create a profile report of those publications to look at all kinds of things related to the research topics that they're about, the collaboration networks that are formed, the productivity, and then some of the citation impact that those publications have had. We also provide quite a lot of training, so we do both online and in-person training, both through the library and for custom training for various people or in various offices at NIH. So we're absolutely available to go to people, provide training in bibliometrics, provide training in how to perform these things, all that kind of stuff. We also do quite a lot of consultations. So we're available to answer questions about bibliometrics, about methodology design, how to design a methodology that's appropriate for answering a particular kind of question, all of that kind of stuff. But also, in addition to some of those training and consultation work, we also provide quite a lot of custom services. So essentially, people can come to us with a particular question in mind, and we can design and actually run an analysis based on that question to try and address what they're interested in. We also do quite a lot of back and forth with a lot of our customers to really design a methodology and to really focus the question, because a lot of times our customers want to actually know what it is they want to do. So we'll try and kind of work with them to figure out what it is they want to learn about their portfolio or their particular project, and we'll design and then execute a analysis based on that to try and address their question. So what we'll do is we'll do a lot of things like topic-based analyses, we'll do citation impact of various portfolios, of particular institutes or laboratories, all those kinds of things. So what I'm going to talk about today really are just going to kind of give you some examples of some of the projects that we've done and how we've leveraged the Thomson Reuters data in order to run those analyses and answer some of those kinds of questions. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we do is we create these profile reports. And again, these are reports from the intramural scientists here at NIH. So many people may not be aware, but NIH, in addition to funding research, also conducts a vast amount of research. We actually have about a $3 billion budget for intramural research here at the NIH. And so what we do is we're going through each of the various institutes and centers, and we're creating these profile reports. So what you're looking at here is a page from one of those reports that we did for the National Cancer Institute. And so we're looking at around 14,000 publications, almost 15,000 publications that were produced by the National Cancer Institute over a 5-year time period. And so we're looking, in addition to looking at all of these other things, we're also looking at some of the citation impact of those publications and then breaking that down in percentile rankings to get a sense for where these publications fall in terms of how highly cited they are. And then we also break it down by subject category and institution and by author and so forth. So again, this is one of the services, and in addition to providing the service for intramural research, we also provide this for extramural portfolios as well. So a lot of the times people will come to us and they'll want to know sort of the citation impact around a particular set of grants that they manage, or a set of grants around a particular topic, and so we'll do analyses based on those as well. Another thing that we do is we look at how some of this research is actually being used. So as you can imagine, the NIH produces quite a lot of very high-profile data sets and makes those available to the public. So one of the natural questions that arises is, well, what are people actually doing with some of these data sets? So what I'm showing here is an analysis that we did to look at the usage of the ENCODE data set. So this is the Encyclopedia of DNA Elements. So this was a massive project that the NIH was involved in and sort of spearheaded over the past decade or so. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at all of the papers that cite this particular data set, and we're looking at the topics that are pursued by these papers to try and get a sense for what this particular data set has actually been used to do in the scientific literature. So what we can see is there's quite a lot of usage around gene expression and regulation, genetic evolution and differentiation, microRNA, and so forth. But what we found the most interesting is in the chart at the top, we found there's been a large increase in the number of publications on genetic associations with disease. So as you can see at the bottom, in the chart at the bottom, we're charting the number of citations per topic per year to this particular data set. And as you can see, starting in 2012, 2013, there's a huge increase in the number of publications we're finding genetic associations with disease based on this Encyclopedia of DNA Elements. So this is really one of those sort of success stories that we're able to show to NHGRI and others at NIH to see how this particular data set is being used and where we might be able to focus research in the future. Another thing that we're looking at is, in addition to looking at things that we fund, we also want to look at scientific research in general, or in the around the world, to try and see what's going on in scientific research. Because from a funder perspective, we're interested in what some of the upcoming areas are, or what some of the hot new research topics are, to try and get ahead of the field a little bit so that we can drive research in the direction of some of these emerging areas. So we can modify funding practices, we can put out calls for proposals on these topics to really drive research in particular directions. So what we're looking at here is a paper citation network of all of the papers that are produced around the topic of the use of nanotechnology for cancer treatment. So we're looking at all of the papers that were published in 2013, I believe, on this topic. And so what we're interested in is not only how this field breaks down, but also how the field might be changing over time. So one of the things that we were really interested in and really surprised to learn about this particular research topic is that rather than organizing itself by the particular kind of cancer or the particular treatment methodology, the literature really organized itself around the kind of nanoparticle, so the material that the nanoparticle is consists of. So it's actually more along the technical lines than along necessarily the treatment or intervention lines. So that was an interesting thing to learn. And then also we can see, based on the density of the dots, so let me explain, the dots represent individual papers in this particular diagram, and the size of the dot indicates the number of times that each paper has been cited in a one-year time period. So what we can see is by looking at the density of dots in particular areas, we were able to see that the majority of the research is happening around liposomes and micelles, but the vast majority of the very highly cited research was actually happening around gold nanoparticles and some of the silica nanoparticles and some of the carbon and graphene nanoparticles. So even though these areas aren't public, or there aren't as many publications on some of these other materials, they're being very rapidly cited, and they're being cited very, very quickly. So that might be an indication that these might be growing areas or sort of driving research forward in the field, and they might represent growth opportunities or opportunities for additional funding that we might want to pursue. And then finally, we do come at this from a library perspective. We are librarians here at the NIH library. So we also wanted to look at this data in terms of our collection development decisions. So we wanted to look at not only where our authors were publishing, but also which publications they were citing. So in this case, we looked at about 10,000 or almost 10,000 articles that were published by NIH authors across all of the institutes and centers in 2014. And then we analyzed the nearly 500,000 references that those articles made to try and get a sense for whether they were publishing recent publications or citing recent publications or older publications, and which titles they were citing most frequently, and so forth, to get a better sense for what information sources were the most relevant and the most useful to our scientists to make sure that we make informed collection development decisions. And some of the interesting things that came out of this were that even though the vast majority of the publication years were the vast majority of the references were to recent publication years, we see that almost 10% of these references are to publications that are 20 years old or older. So we're looking at over 40,000 references here to publications that are 20 years old or older. So clearly we not only need to have access to recent publications, but also to some of these legacy publications as well. We can also see that the vast majority of the titles that are being referenced are being done to a very small number of journals. So over half of all of the references that NIH authors made were to a collection of about 160 to 170 journals. So we can actually provide access to this very small set of publications and have an extremely large return on that investment. So again, we're wanting to look at this data to make more informed decisions about the collections that we provide access to and be better stewards of our collection budgets. So that's really just a very quick overview of what we're doing here at the NIH Library. There's a whole lot of other things that we're doing, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the kinds of things that we're doing and the kinds of ways that we're leveraging data to provide services to our customers and to NIH as a whole. So if you're interested, my name is Chris Belter. My colleague Yaling Liu is also very much involved in all of these services. So if you're interested in getting in contact with us, asking us questions, or setting up training or anything of that regard, please feel free to get in touch. So thank you all very much.